my name is Luke Jordan from LukeJ25 Church of Christ in Frisco, Texas. Have you ever dodged a call? Not because, you didn't know who it was, but because you did. It's that sinking feeling that when you see the name and your stomach just turns and you know exactly what they're going to say. You know what they're going to ask, and in that moment, your thumb just hovers over decline. Why? Because sometimes clarity is more terrifying than confusion. We don't usually run from things we don't understand. We run from things we do. And when your phone rings and you already know who it is, you see the name, you know the conversation, and you don't answer it, not because you're confused, but because you're not ready. Maybe it's your boss, maybe it's a friend you've been avoiding, maybe it's someone that tells you the truth too often. Whatever the case, the problem isn't mystery, it's clarity. And that's Jonah. Jonah didn't need clarification. He didn't need to fast for 3 days and seek a sign. He didn't need confirmation. He didn't need a second opinion. God said, go to Nineveh, and he said no. That's what is crazy, is that he wasn't some atheist. This was a prophet. He was a man of God, someone who knew God's voice. And yet the moment he heard it, he ran in the opposite direction. And sometimes we assume that people run from God when they're far from him. But the truth is, some of people running the fastest are the ones who know him best. And why? Why do people, especially believers, run from the very God they claim to serve? Let's look at Jonah chapter 1, verse 1, because if Jonah can run, so can we, and maybe we are running. Verse 1 says, the word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. That's not vague, it's not symbolic, that's not poetic, that's clear. God says go, God says speak, and God says call out evil. But Jonah doesn't respond with questions, he doesn't ask for details, he doesn't argue, he just leaves. No hesitation, no explanation, just escape. Because Jonah knew what Nineveh was. These weren't just bad people, they were violent, cruel, oppressive. They were the kind of people Jonah had every reason to hate. They were his nation's enemies. Jonah knew that God was merciful. He knew if they listened, God would forgive. And that's exactly what Jonah didn't want. See, it wasn't that Jonah didn't understand God's command, it's that he didn't like it. And that's us too, right? God says, forgive them. We say, after what they did, never. God says, walk away from that sin. We say, but it makes me feel better. God says, confess it. And we say, what if they judge me? We don't need clarification. We need courage. We're not confused. We're conflicted. Sometimes the reason we run isn't because God is unclear. It's because he's too clear. And we just wish he'd say something different. Verse 3. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He ran down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went abroad and sailed. Now that Jonah paid a price to run, he spent real money to get away from what God said. And that's how committed he was to disobedience. And let's be honest, that's what we do sometimes. Because obedience costs comfort. Jonah had the two options, either go preach to the people he hated or run. And the choice that looked easier wasn't obedience, it was escape. And obedience is rarely convenient. It stretches you, it confronts your pride, it calls you out of what's easy. The comfort isn't the goal, closeness is. And closeness to God doesn't come from staying in safe places. It comes when you step into the hard ones where he already is. Wow. And let's not miss the most ridiculous part of the story where it says Jonah ran away from the Lord. Really? From the Lord? This is the God who made the oceans, the skies, and the wind that Jonah's about to sail into. And how do you outrun a God who's everywhere? You don't. But here's the thing, disobedience doesn't make you bold, it makes you blind. We start believing lies like, if I just ignore him, he'll stop talking. Or if I go far enough, he'll let me go. If I drown in distractions, I won't feel conviction. But you know what running really does? It wears you out. Jonah thought he could get away, but what he didn't know was that God was already in Tarshish. And God is already in that place you're afraid to face. So let's put this all together. We run because we don't like what God says, because we'd rather be comfortable and courageous, and because we think we can escape. The story of Jonah reminds us running doesn't bring peace, it just delays purpose. And some of us are tired, not because life is hard, but because we've been running from the one who gives us rest. And the most dangerous place to be is not in a storm, not in Nineveh, not even in a fish. The most dangerous place to be is outside of God's will. But what's the most peaceful place? Right in the center of it. Even if that place is hard, even if it's scary, even if it's Nineveh. Because God's presence doesn't follow your feelings, it follows your obedience. So I ask you plainly, where are you running? What conversation have you been avoiding? What truth have you been ignoring? What calling have you been pretending you didn't hear? You already know what God said, but you've been hoping time would erase it. And here's the good news. God doesn't give up when you run. He doesn't chase you to punish you. He chases you to bring you back. He's not after your fear. He's after your future. So stop running, because even if you spent years heading to Tarshish, one step of surrender puts you back on track. And when you stop running, you'll find what Jonah eventually found. Not wrath, not rejection, but a God who still calls your name, even after you ran.